Well, I wanted to provide a little bit of a recap in terms of what's happened since the Silicon Valley Bank backstop or bailout. That's a word we're not really using. But I think it's important to understand a little bit about the mechanics and where some of the other risks or cracks might be. And also, of course, to get a bit of an outlook in terms of what that means for the economy and the Fed going forward from here. And for that, I want to bring in a former Fed insider. That is Danielle DiMartino Booth. She's the founder and CEO of Quill Intelligence. Danielle, great to be with you again. Thanks so much for joining us.
And thank you for having me. Great to be back with you, Catherine.
Thank you. Let's just kind of start big picture here. I mean, it's been a couple of weeks since the SVB backstop. I don't know if you're calling it a bailout or backstop or what the right wording is and whether or not it was the right move. Let me just get your take in terms of, we look back and what you think about it now.
Well, it's certainly a softer bank failure, if you will, in the sense that had Silicon Valley been an isolated event, albeit the 16th largest bank in the United States, then depositors would be kind of in a holding pattern right now, waiting to get whatever it would be, 75, 80 cents on the dollar of north of the 250,000 that the FDIC was had guaranteed in their deposits. We're obviously not there, and regulators felt that there was a substantial enough risk of systemic risk breaking out, a contagion of coast to coast bank runs, that it felt it was appropriate to step in and fully backstop the depositors as well as those of Signature Bank in New York as well. So, those are decisions that were made again in the heat of a crisis. It seems like the worst is past at this point, but I dare say that whatever it is that we're in the midst of, it can't quite be over.
Right. I would agree. I don't think it's over. And I think we all need to be looking for, what's next and where the cracks are, which we're going to get to in a moment. But it's interesting as well, Danielle, like let's talk a little bit about why this even occurred. And you have been quite, I think, well, we talked about this, critical of the Fed keeping rates low for so long. And really pumping the system was just so much liquidity and so much money. And then here we are. Wow. Not enough money, not enough liquidity, because they were so aggressive in reversing the lower for longer interest rate environment. So maybe just give a little bit of a backdrop in terms of, not could we have seen this coming, but it is one of the implications of the stimulus that we've seen for the past 12 years.
So, I think a really big picture takeaway from this is the danger of the Fed keeping rates kind of cemented to the zero ground, because if they ever try and extricate themselves, what we're learning is that markets have become wholly dependent on maintaining rates at absolutely zero just in order to function. And that's not really a natural environment in which an economy can exist on its own. That means that if it's a patient, if you will, you can never remove the patient from the IV drip of constant stimulus. And I'm hoping that Fed officials and other central bankers around the world are able to sit back before they go back to the zero bound and say, wait a minute, we might need to actually look to the future and look to what went wrong with this policy in the first place.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think, though, right now? I mean, it was really very aggressive tightening over the past year. I mean, I don't think we've seen 500 basis points of tightening without having, incredibly high inflation or incredibly high unemployment rate, historically speaking. So it was out of the norm. What do they do now? What do they do next?
So I think what Powell has in mind is maintaining a tight stance. And this has really never been attempted, not even in the Volcker years. At some point, Volcker did begin to ease. But if you pay attention to what Fed officials reflected in the dot plot, their projections for the future, they don't see interest rates being below 4.3% until beyond December of 2024. So that means that Fed officials are going to try something that's never been tried, and that is maintain higher for longer. And again, you go back 50 years and the economy is not really prepared for such resoluteness in monetary policy. We will see. This is a day-by-day experiment.